All right, the full ride back here on the Chase Thomas podcast, where I am joined by a man who owns exactly 2 sweatshirts, maybe 3, if we're being generous, because this man has been on video podcasts, I swear, for a month now, and I've only seen him in the Atlanta Braves hoodie, the University of North Georgia hoodie, and the University of Georgia, or in the Atlanta Braves hoodie. I don't know if I would just repeat myself, but it's a Braves, North Georgia, and Georgia hoodie. That's
And
the man's a hoodie guy.
Maddox actually chewed up that Georgia hoodie. Yeah, got into it. Just one night, it was left on a little bench at the end of our bed, and what was kind of ideal, he ripped it along the seam right behind the neck. So, like, of all the places to rip a hoodie, when you're just wearing the hoodie like normal, you can't actually see it. But, oh, man, I was devastated with him.
What was the reaction? Did you wake up the next morning? Did you see it?
I caught him in the act. It was like you just hear a noise. I feel like you just hear a noise like in your sleep. You don't have to pay attention to it. And then after a while, you're like, oh, wait, that's what that is. Just ripping my favorite hoodie to shreds.
Oh, man. So Zeus is firmly...
It's not that bad, but yeah.
It's not that bad. Your favorite hoodie down the drain.
It's still wearable. That's what I'm saying. It is still wearable. So it's not necessarily to shreds, but yeah. Zeus
would never.
Zeus tries to like get in the toilet and stuff, like get in the trash. Like we had to put a lock on the trash because of Zeus. But yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. I actually got them both. I got them both in studio right now. So
do you? Okay.
We'll see. There's not as much window access down here, so I figured the chances of them seeing something and going nuts and barking are lower down here. So we'll see.
Can they see anything in the dark? It's dark outside. Can they see anything?
I mean, there's street lights. You can. Okay. Who knows? The dogs hear a small noise and then just one barks, one kind of barks, and they both just go nuts. So it is what it is. The reality of 2 dogs.
The reality of 2 dogs, and we now know who the number 1 is in the Matt Green household is Zeus. Like the man, he doesn't chew up your hoodies, so it sounds like you're favoring him. Well, Khaleesi the dog is actually kind of similar in her dumb situations where she's just like suicidal sometimes, where she loves chocolate, and when we've had that situation where she just will eat all the chocolate and then rush her to the vet because it's could kill her. So that's one of those dumb things where you're like, what? Apparently before, because Khaleesi predates me with the Sports Renaissance Woman, and this has been a thing. Like you would think after the first time the dog would understand that like this thing is probably not supposed to be in me because I have to go to the vet whenever I eat this stuff. And she has not equated the 2 together yet. I'm maybe when she turns 9 this year, that's when it will really kick in.
The heart wants what it wants.
It's
wild. A funny story kind of along those lines. Major Wingate, rest in peace, former Tennessee Volunteer and North Gwinnett Bulldog. He was allergic to orange juice. But he like loved orange juice. So he would just like smell it. He would just like smell orange juice because he like liked it that much. But yeah, it was crazy.
I didn't know that. Where did you pick up on that? Where did you see that?
I mean, I just remember my brother played on the high school team with him. So
that's right.
I remember that detail. It was kind of crazy.
So the players just knew that he was out there sniffing. Like some people huff paint. Major Wingate was out there sniffing some orange juice.
I guess so.
Big Minute Maid guy. That's wild. I don't even really like orange juice as much. Orange juice is okay. It's not a big. I'm more of a apple juice kind of guy. Apple juice is the king juice. Like there's no question that apple juice is number 1.
I'm going orange juice over apple juice, but I feel I'm going lemonade probably first.
Too sugary. You can't do lemonade.
I mean, pink lemonade. Pink lemonade would be ideal over a little raspberry lemonade, a little Publix raspberry lemonade. That's my jam right there. I'm sure there's a bunch of sugar. I'm sure that's all it is.
Well, you know how I feel about Publix. You know that
the only person in the South that doesn't like Publix.
Can't do it. Don't want you to talk to me when I'm in the place. Can't have it. I want you
just hate good customer service.
Yes, I'm very pro. Like I don't want to be here because I'm like we're on the same page. I don't want to be here either. I get where you're coming from. No, but we have a lot of other college football stuff we have to hit on Matt Green tonight. I want to start with your favorite subject matter, the Florida Gators, who hired Billy Napier this offseason. And he is going, well, like, we haven't played a game yet, but one of the things when you read the quotes, when you kind of get a sense of where his head's at recruiting wise and what he wants to do differently than his predecessor Dan Mullen, is that I don't think he has any problems being a recruiting first guy. Like, he obviously developed really well in Louisiana, but he seems to really understand that, like, that has to change. It's like Mullen tried to get away with, well, we might not recruit as well, but I'm a better in-game coach and I'm a better offensive scheme guy that, like, I will out scheme Georgia. I will out scheme Alabama. I'll out scheme whoever. And that wears thin after a while.
Or elite a talent evaluator or something. Maybe they're not 5 stars, but we're getting good players, that sort of thing.
Right. And Napier's like, hey, this is something that we were wondering, because this happened to Florida State in the early 2000s, where part of what happened to Florida State and even to Miami to an extent was that the state of Florida got raided by Alabama, by Clemson, by other programs, Ohio State, by programs all around the country. So it was not on lockdown anymore. Florida State used to just get the best players in the state of Florida, and there's always been an inherent advantage of having a university happen to be in a state where high school football is awesome and the player development's awesome. That's just the way it is. It's like, it will always be easier to be good in a Georgia school than Nebraska. Like, it's just always going to be easier because kids ultimately do want to stay home. They want to stay close to home. They want their parents to be able to come see them. They want family, friends, all that kind of stuff. Like, there's an inherent advantage. Napier's coming in and he's like, I want to get this back up to 65 to 80% Florida players on my team. Like, he wants to flip that script and he wants to work on locking down Florida. Heupel said the same kind of thing at Tennessee, but the difference is you can lock down the state of Tennessee. That doesn't really do anything. Like, there's just not a bunch of 5-star talent, unfortunately, in the state of Tennessee. Like, they just had the first 5-star quarterback in a while in Ty Sampson, and he picked Alabama. All that being said, is you kind of have to. Tennessee is just different. We'll get into them in a second, but I do think it's
on the level of like a Louisiana or something
like
that.
So you can lock it down, but that's not going to win you a title. Like, you cannot. That's a nice thing to build good relationships, and you want to lock down your home state. But for Tennessee to get to that next level, they still have to pick from Alabama. They still have to pick off Georgia. They still have to pick off North Carolina. They still have to pick off some Florida. Like, you can't only do that. But Florida can only, or not even only, overwhelmingly become a contender again by just locking down a lot of what they've lost in the state of Florida. Now, do I think that's possible? I don't know. We'll see. But we saw what happened to Florida State when this happened. It just changed the whole dynamic of the program. And now they're still trying to get back a little bit. Miami, they are not the same recruiting program that they've been since the early 2000s. Cristobal down there in Miami now, this is the best recruiting operation that Miami's had in 20 years. Like, this is the best Miami staff they've had in 20 years. This is the best financial support they've had. So, all that being said, this is fascinating to me that the state of Florida and the universities in Florida are like, we're taking our state back. Do you believe that Billy Napier can get this roster to 65 to 80% Florida players? Are you as optimistic as he is?
We'll see that now. That's a whole other conversation, right? 65 to 85% Florida players. Yeah, he could do that tomorrow if he wanted to. Mm-hmm. It's not about just getting guys from Florida. It's that Florida produces those elite level players, and you need to go get yourself some of those elite level players. It kind of reminded me of Howard Schnellenberger's, how he built Miami initially. Like, I think he just, I don't know where the exact line was, but he cut a line through, say, Lakeland or Orlando. Everything below this is the state of Miami, and that's how they built their recruiting strategy. And you saw what Miami became in the 80s and 90s. But the one thing that Miami has is that geographical advantage. Not only that they're, near the beach and all that, South Florida and everything, but it's South Florida is like Miami's the heart of that, whereas Florida, it is right in the middle of the state, but there's not necessarily a region that's like, okay, Florida is my place. Maybe there's the Panhandle. You could be from Central Florida. Florida's obviously in a good geographical spot, but there's something about the pride that comes from being like South Florida, Miami. It seems to have a whole nother level of like pull that Florida doesn't seem to have. I was just looking at just the last 4 years alone, the state of Florida has produced 22 5-star prospects, and Florida has gotten 2 of those. And I don't know the numbers on Florida State and Miami. I think Miami probably got a couple more, but
yeah,
I would say, just guessing off the top of my head, Florida State and Miami probably have another 3 or 4 or 5, maybe. Like, these guys are all leaving the state, and it's such a weird time, like you said, for all these programs to kind of be in flux. Like Miami with the first-year head coach, and Florida with the first-year head coach. Like, somebody's trying to lay the roots down now, and Miami seems like they're in a better position to do it, like right now, today, than Florida. But I don't know. The ceiling of Florida still feels a little higher than Miami in 2022 to me. Like, I wouldn't have said that 10, 15 years ago, but Miami, I don't know. They don't seem like, it's just been so long since we saw them really compete for anything. Like, even Florida, the interesting thing about Florida is from 91 to 2010, Florida is one of the elite programs in college football. Basically, any time before that and any time after that, they haven't been. So it's like, what is the, I should say, like, outlier? Like, which of these things is more reflective?
Who are they really? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. 100 years of playing football, 115, 20 years of playing football. You were elite for a 20-year period, and then you were just a fine, just an okay, good program for every other year. And you had 2 Hall of Fame coaches during that time too. So Florida's just in a very interesting position. Georgia's obviously never been at this level that they're currently at. That's another challenge that is there for Florida, on top of the 2 in-state schools and Alabama coming down and raiding your home. Because I think you said to multiple teams and coming down and raiding Florida. Georgia is definitely one of those. I think they have 3 5-stars from this 2022 class alone from the state of Florida. So it's they're in a really interesting spot, but it feels like a spot you can get out of, like, because Florida, like Dan Mullen, they went, what was McElwain's last year, like 4-7. They went from 4-7 to like 10-3, 11-2 the first 2 years after that. So Florida, as tough as a position as they're in, it feels like they're definitely, like, they're just a big time program. So they definitely have the ability to be elite again.
The staff that Cristobal's put together is just bonkers. Like, I don't know. And the other thing I would say in terms of that's going to be in Miami's favor is just that, like, the ACC it's just a lot more open area for them to take advantage. Like, Clemson is obviously coming down a little bit, and outside of Clemson, look at who was in the ACC championship game this year. It was Pitt and Wake Forest. Like, Miami getting their act together, even just somewhat, even if Cristobal's not an A+, if he's at A-, B+, they're running the ACC. Like, it's them and Clemson again. Like, it's right there. Like, the ACC's been waiting on Miami to figure its crap out for the entirety of Miami being in the ACC.
This is why we invited you guys.
Yes, exactly. They've never won the conference, like, ever. So your point is well taken in that, like, Florida at least has shown it. Like, we've seen it of late. Miami, we haven't seen it. But I would just say, like, Florida's probably the more comfortable bet. Like, if I had to put money on it, it'd be Florida. But, like, it should be Miami. And that's why it would just drive me nuts if I'm a Miami fan, because I'm like, we're Miami. Like, there's so much talent in the state of Florida anyway, and most kids would prefer to live in Miami versus Gainesville. We should not lose these battles to Florida. Like, we shouldn't anymore. Being a Miami Hurricane was cool. It should be cool again. You should be good. You should be awesome. Like, it's like the Texas thing where you're just like, I don't understand how you guys can't figure this out, because you have this inherent advantage over everyone else in your conference, and yet you still just, it's baffling. Clemson's not, like, remember what Clemson was before Dabo, like, just created this Nick Saban, like, operation? Like, it was a
fine program. It's
right.
Good.
Yeah, they were okay. They were fine. They were living their best life with Woody Dantzler and Charlie Whitehurst. They weren't competing for Chauncey Stuckey. They weren't competing for titles.
Spiller.
Yeah, they weren't competing for titles. They were just fine. They were like an 8-4, 9. They're kind of like what NC State is now, where it was like they were solid. They were always going to be solid. But you never were like, they can win a national title. There was no fear that Clemson was going to break through and win a national title. But now they are. But like, that should have been Miami. That should be Miami every year. This should be a thing. So I'm so fascinated to see the battle between Napier and Cristobal, because I think the battle lines have been drawn and they both want to lock down the state of Florida. But I don't think, like you said, you cannot have a dominant Miami program and a dominant Florida recruiting program at the same time. I don't think that works, especially with Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State still rocking the state of Florida.
Well, it's interesting you say that too, because I don't have those numbers in front of me, but like Miami's most dominant run initially was that mid to late 80s. Florida was not an elite program then. And then I think the last one they won for a while was like 91, I think, Miami. And then Florida goes on a stretch. I mean, they only won one national championship in the 90s, but two with Urban Meyer. Like, there's just kind of that little hiccup right there with Ron Zook. Is kind of where Miami was elite again there. So it is kind of interesting now that you put it that way, that Florida and Miami haven't necessarily been elite at the same time. I mean, there was, I think, 2000, I think they played in like the Orange Bowl.
Yeah.
So I think they were like both really good with Rex Grossman and everything. But it seems like there's enough talent in the state that there's no reason they can't both be good at the same time. Because, I mean, and Florida State was good through that entire stretch, like basically never missing a beat throughout Miami and Florida's good years too. So it's crazy to think that there's enough talent, but I feel like there is. Like, I don't know. Like, it is interesting. Like, this is the weird part about college football too, is that like you have the conversation of who is better, but then there's also who's better compared to what is standing in your way. So with Florida, it feels like they can be better, and they have been significantly better, I would say, over the last decade, 15 years or so. But Georgia and LSU are on their schedule every single year. Tennessee is on the way back up. Like, that could be another challenge. But then if you get through those teams, you're basically playing Alabama every year. Like, what stands between Miami is Clemson. And it's not like it's been Clemson keeping Miami back. They haven't been consistently making the ACC championship or anything. So with Clemson coming back a step, like we said, there's literally nothing really standing in Miami's way in the ACC. And so they're definitely in a better position than Florida is.
I'm going to do a pop quiz real quick and we'll move on. You ready for this?
All right, hit me.
You're going to tell me if this is Kirby or Billy Napier. Quote, "This is a talent acquisition business. I mean, there's no question it starts with the players."
I mean, I'm going to guess that was Billy Napier just because you asked.
It was Billy Napier, but that could easily be word for word something Kirby said when he first started, and just how he operates. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
I think there's going to be a lot of similarities between the two.
Saban is number one person. I feel like so many times when people are talking about whatever kind of narratives they want to talk about, Saban's always bringing it back to the players. It's like, look, these players are the ones doing it. Like, I remember even Kirby saying it when Georgia won the national championship. Like, oh, these fans have waited so long for this. What does this mean? It's like, yeah, the fans are great and everything. They showed up, but the players, they're the one that actually did it. They're the ones that actually came to the workout and earned this. So you're nothing without the players. So that's why recruiting never ends, you know?
That's true. Speaking of recruiting and just coaching, Matt Luke steps down at UGA as their offensive line coach. Tennessee loses their wide receiver coach, Cody Burns, to the Saints in the same role. And then Kentucky loses Liam Coen, their new OC, who just helped an offense that set all kinds of Kentucky records with Chris Rodriguez and Will Levis this past year. He goes to become the OC with the Rams. Dude, this is a lot of turnover in the SEC East. Of the three, which stands out the most to you? Which are you most interested in?
I think Liam Coen, definitely. That seems like the biggest one right there. Just because Kentucky has, as solid as they've been in recent years, that's what we've talked about. It's been but the offense is just, it's nothing, you know? And so we finally saw, even with a quarterback that wasn't, the greatest passer, he was a dynamic athlete, but we saw how good that offense could be the last couple years, and obviously it was still improving. So it's going to be tough to find a replacement to be able to keep Kentucky's offense making that same progress.
This comes from Matt Jones, who's pretty plugged in with Kentucky Sports Radio. He said, quote, as UK starts to look for a new offensive coordinator, I am hearing it's a wide search, and most of the names people are talking about are not names being considered. That's interesting, but also bad timing. Like, you need to get this in, like, losing a wide receiver coach or an offensive line coach at this time hurts, but losing your OC a month before spring practice is not ideal. Because also the other thing you have to worry about is the portal, because we don't have a timeline or anything. Like, these guys now, they're like, oh, I came here for Liam Coen in this new offense. And if you hire the wrong kind of OC, guess what? They're out the door. Like, you're going to look at some post spring exits that's going to be really uncomfortable because the college football is a wild, wild west right now. And this is something that could shake a lot of what Kentucky's going to try and do this fall. I don't know, man. I think if you're a Kentucky fan, I'd be quite nervous because Stoops did not figure out this offense before Coen. And it was a good outside the box to bring in somebody like him, and we'll see. And it's good that it seems like he's going to go outside the box again. But I'll see it when I believe it, man. This is a problem. Like, if Kentucky is ever going to break through, it has to be because they hired the right offensive mind, and they needed Coen to stick around. And I don't know if this is a brutal blow because Stoops knows defense. They're going to be competent. They're going to be great. But if you want to compete with Georgia, you even want to compete with Tennessee, because Tennessee's not scared of this offense, and they're not scared of Kentucky next year. Like, Hendon Hooker is still going to outscore whoever it is on Kentucky's sideline. It doesn't matter. I don't know. I would be nervous if I was a Kentucky fan. But Cody Burns leaving does hurt, because now, I mean, you could say the best part might be Justin Williams, the running back, but I think with Squirrel White, with Cam Miller, with the amount of wide receiver talent that came in this spring because of Cody Burns and what he was bringing to this team, like, that's 4 freshmen who came on campus early and enrolled early to work with him. I don't know what that means. I'm kind of nervous that this could lead to at least one transfer with him dipping, but we'll see, because this wide receiver room's thin. Tennessee loses Velus Jones and Javonte Payton, and they're replacing them with Jalen Hyatt, and we'll see. Ramel Keaton might be in there. I don't know. The wide receiver room is pretty thin at the moment with actual proven depth. A lot of names that are young that are interesting, but not guys that are ready to do it yet. So I'm curious to see what Cody's departure means in the short term for a lot of the young guys who came on. But Luke's was pretty surprising too, right? Like, this was something that Georgia fans weren't expecting. I don't know. It seems like is he just stepping away from football? Is that the sense you've gotten? Like, what is he going to do?
That's what it seems like. It's just wants to see his kids grow up, that sort of thing. Like, I think his kids are in like middle school or high school. He wants to see him play football, that sort of thing. So maybe it's like a 5-6 year break. I don't know. That doesn't typically happen and you get back into coaching, but we'll see. I thought it was interesting because this could have been kind of what Kirby Smart was foreshadowing around the national championship when he had that interview with Reese Davis, that there's a lot of really good college football coaches out there that are going to choose not to be college football coaches because of just the wear and tear that it does to your personal life, to just your family, your free time, and all of that. It's just a 24/7 game. Kirby Smart seems to be wired that way and just breathes recruiting, eats, sleeps, and breathes recruiting. But not everybody's wired that way. So you're either going to see guys go to the NFL or you're just going to see them just outright just step down. I was definitely surprised by it. And that scenario, less than the other two, is why I've just been pounding the table all year when we talk about the college football calendar. We just have to do something about when signing day. Signing day should be sometime in March, and have one before the season if you want to do that. But it's throwing off everything. And now with these guys being able to leave the portal and be eligible right away, there's just teams are in such a rush to fill every single position. Like, I mean, how many is it? Which position? I get them confused that Miami's hired like 3 offensive coordinators like this off season, or maybe it's defensive coordinators. I could be getting confused, but it's like they get somebody and then, oh, actually so-and-so from the NFL just opened up. So now big time dude from Alabama's going there. Now Alabama's got an open spot. Just so that's how the carousel works. And just having these teams rush so they can have guys on staff for early signing day. And then 2 months later, they're not even at that school anymore. It's just something's got to change. It's kind of a ridiculous. And you have to have it based on the NFL's calendar, because the NFL coaching fraternity and the college coaching fraternity are just so intertwined. It's going to impact the carousel. So that's what I thought when I saw the Cody Burns and the Liam Coen going to the Rams. It's like, you're just, this is going to be commonplace of just guys taking a job and then, taking another job. Like we saw Manny Diaz do that with Temple, that with a head coaching job, and then take the Miami job later that same offseason. But it's going to be more and more common until they can just get this calendar fixed and have some things under control.
And it all leads back to having conferences run this stuff and not some actual governing body, like not having some sort of leader, some sort of president that actually does something. Like when you let conferences all figure it out themselves, guess what? You have a mess on your hands. And we'll get into that in our main event. But quickly, there was a really good piece on 247 about the SEC quarterback rankings heading into 2022. Matt, you're not going to believe this, but the Vanderbilt quarterback Ken Seals starting off at number 14. How shocking was that when you first saw that the Vanderbilt Commodores might have another bad offense next year?
Shocked.
Mm-hmm. I thought you were going to do the dodgeball bit there, where I'm shocked. Cotton, what was it? What was the line?
No, you're thinking
Jason Bateman was like
bold strategy, Cotton. See if it pays off. I don't know.
No, but I remember that one. But he was like, there was another line in there where, Bateman's character is Cotton.
Oh, I do. He's like a shocking turn of events or something, and then he's just like, I am shocked. I think that's his color commentary to that.
Yeah, Pepper. What was his name? Pepper Brooks. That was his name. Pepper
go.
Brooks. It was driving me nuts. But yeah, that was something I was thinking of when I saw that. But yeah, we can run down this list real quick. Brady Cook. From Missouri, he started the bowl game for them. Didn't see a lot in that Army game. You get Zach Calzada at Auburn at 12, Anthony Richardson at 11 at Florida. Brennan, who returned, he went to the portal, came back out with Brian Kelly at number 10. Will Levis at number 9. Jackson Dart at number 8 at Ole Miss. Max Johnson at Texas A&M at 7, which is weird to me, and we'll get into that in a second. Stetson at 6. Spencer Rattler at 5. Will Rogers at 4. Hendon Hooker, Hendo Cinco, ladies and gentlemen. KJ Jefferson at number 2, and number 1, Bryce Young. I thought by and large this is a pretty fair list. I didn't really have some strong disagreements here. I think the bottom 3 are unanimous, but I could see how some people might have some questions about Jackson Dart, or they might have some questions about where Stetson belongs. But by and large, I don't know. I thought this is a pretty fair list. I'd probably switch out Hendon and KJ, because I think if Arkansas and Kendall Briles was offered a straight up swap for KJ or Hendon Hooker, I think he would probably take Hooker based on what we saw last year. But I don't know. KJ Jefferson's a good player, and Arkansas is a good team, so I don't hate that. But I don't know. What did you make of this list?
Yeah, that one surprised me a little bit. I think Hendon Hooker, you kind of wonder how much the offense might benefit, how good he actually is. Maybe you put someone else in that position running Heupel's offense.
We saw Joe Milton do it, and it was not.
No, that could be true. Mm-hmm. I think it's a more quarterback-friendly offense necessarily than what KJ Jefferson is in. But so I thought Hooker would be 2, but I don't disagree with having KJ Jefferson at 2. The one I would say, Will Rogers. I would not have Will Rogers at 4. I would have him below Stetson, probably just below Stetson. Like, Will Rogers is good, but this guy threw the ball 700 times last year. You should have some good stats. You throw the ball 700 times. So that's what I thought. I feel like Anthony Richardson, I think you sent me a list the other day, just like in text message. I think they had him like 4 or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't like that. That was a different one. That wasn't 247. I forgot who did that.
No, I can't.
It might have been Saturday Down South. It might have been them.
Yeah, that might have been it. So I think he's got the widest range of outcomes that he appears to have some physical tools that are special, right? But it's like there's so much more that goes to playing the quarterback position than that. He seems like he wouldn't surprise you if he was third team All SEC or if he wasn't the starter halfway through the season. You know what I mean? It's like it's just you have no idea what you're expecting. I thought Miles Brennan at 10 was a little low. But like, would you think Will Levis is better than Miles Brennan?
No. Jackson Dart's a wild card, man. I can't even
that's true.
I don't know. I think Jackson Dart, if he's healthy, and what we just saw from Matt Corral in this Lane Kiffin offense, I mean, but then again, remember, their OC left to go to Oklahoma to join up with Venables, so new OC in Oxford. So we'll see what that does. But I don't know. They have a new OC and DC actually. But yeah, I don't know. I think Dart is a wild card. Will Rogers, like you said, I don't know. 4 seems kind of high. I would also probably flip Stetson and Spencer. Like, I think at this point, Stetson deserves the benefit of the doubt between the two of them. Rattler's another wild card. And I think the wild card should just be behind the guys that we know. Like Brady Cook.
Just make like 5 through 10 as the wild cards.
Yeah, like Anthony Richardson, like I would actually put ahead of Johnson. I put him ahead of Dart. I put him ahead of Levis. I put him ahead of
put Anthony Richardson ahead of Max Johnson?
I would, because I don't even know if Max Johnson's going to win the job this summer. Like, he still has to compete with Haynes King. I'm not I'm not convinced that Haynes King doesn't win this job. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. Max Johnson, what I would say is they're both unproven, but I think Richardson has a higher ceiling between the two. So between those two wild cards, if I had to guess who has the better college career or has the better season next year, if I had to bet on it, it'd be Richardson. But I mean, I'm not passionate about it because they're all wild cards. The only ones that I know are going to be good next year, that I know are going to be good quarterbacks in the SEC next year, that we just know, is Stetson, is Hendon, is KJ, and Bryce. Those are the only 4 I think we can for sure say are going to be good SEC quarterbacks next year.
And then you know what you're getting from Will Rogers.
Yes.
Like, he's fine. Like, Mississippi State's going to do what they do, and they're going to do their air raid thing. But yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think Spencer Rattler it's hard to say which one is the biggest wild card, like you said, because would it surprise you if Spencer Rattler was the best quarterback in the SEC? Like, I mean,
yes,
next to Bryce Young. If he was second to Bryce Young as being the
that would still surprise me. With South Carolina,
it wouldn't be the most shocking thing. I'm not predicting it. Yeah, like you're saying.
Hold on, I have a question, Matt Green. When has South Carolina had the second best quarterback in the SEC at any point in South Carolina's history?
Oh man. Who are the best quarterbacks back in 2013, 2014?
Steven Garcia? Like, who are we going with here? Shaw?
I was thinking Connor Shaw. Like, but Aaron Murray was better than him, like Zach Mettenberger.
Go
Johnny
up and down the list, man.
Around then.
That's what I'm saying. They've never had the number 2 quarterback in the conference. It's never happened.
Steve Taneyhill, was he the old school one with the mullet?
I mean, I believe
back in the day.
Sure, but like I'll see it when I believe it.
That's a good point.
At least we've seen it in Kentucky. Like, we saw Tim Couch and Jared Lorenzen. Like, we've seen Andre Woodson. Yeah, we've seen elite quarterback play in the Bluegrass State. We haven't seen it in Columbia yet.
That's fair. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen though. It's a new era. It's the Beamer era, man.
Dude, if I see one more Coach of the Year stuff, like I just
it's your favorite coach, man. Just accept it.
It drives me up the wall. I cannot see it anymore. It like, thankfully, Heupel was a good sport about it, but that Spurrier was there presenting both awards to both of them. What a crock. What a crock that they had to split the award when we already have the on the field evidence of who had the better season. They played each other. We don't have to do this. They played each other.
I don't want to get you all riled up again. Might be too late.
Oh my goodness.
Spencer Rattler is just, it's hard to pinpoint because everyone just wants to hate on him, and just because he got benched, but he got benched for Caleb Williams. So
I think it's also the high school stuff. I think it's the attitude stuff. I don't know.
I think there's stuff too.
Yeah.
But he could very well be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC, and that alone could have South Carolina being one of the better teams in the SEC. Like, I'm not predicting it to happen, but I can see the avenue in which it could happen.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's far out there in the distance.
I'm not there. I'm not doing that. If they finish above fourth in the SEC, I'd be SEC East. I'd be floored. Well, let's get into the college football playoff that did not expand this week. We can loop this into Miami and whether or not they're the next sleeping giant. Friend of the pod, Josh Pate, had a really good thing about this, about what they're building down there in Miami, but they didn't expand. That being said, they're expanding after 2025. Like, that was what happened there, is like, we're going to expand, but we're not going to do the work right now to throw this into, like, we're not doing this. And like the silly stuff that they were fighting over, like guaranteed bids and certain things like that, like that was just silly. But like, they clearly acknowledge that they need to expand more, but they're just not going to do it until they have to in 2025. So the feeling that I've gotten is it's happening. They're going to 12, but it's just not going to happen until they have to in 2025. They're not shaking things up before they have to. They're not doing more work now to set things up later. And I mean, Greg Sankey's fine with it. Like, he's getting 2 teams in the SEC. I mean, the playoff, like, he just had an all SEC playoff anyway. And I don't know, like, it was kind of a bummer because, like, I am so split on this, and I think you and I have different perspectives on the college football playoff anyway. But if you go to 12, then the bowls have to go. Like, that is my perspective, is like, if you go to 12, then bowl season needs to go away. Like, it hurts, but you cannot have both things. You cannot have a bowl schedule and then have a 12-team 3 to 4 week playoff system. You cannot have these two competing things anymore. Then it's already getting more complicated with a 4-team playoff and the opt-outs and everything else. You either become a tournament, like I think the Solid Verbal guys mentioned this, which was like, you either are a tournament sport or you're a bowl sport. And I agree with that. It's like, you cannot have both. You cannot walk the line with both of these things. So that kind of bums me out. But the other part of me is like, we're already there. Like, bowl season this year was not anything like what we grew up with. Bowl season has not been like what we grew up with. And you're not going backwards. Like, we're not going back to what bowl season used to be. And that's just how it is. It's unfortunate, but like, if you're going to do a playoff expansion, then that kind of has to be the thing. And I don't know, like, it does kind of stink because it would be cool to see these matchups, especially if they can get on board with the first round all being at home sites. That's something that should be built into it. And then you go to the bowls for the next round and you wrap up that way. But I don't know. It's coming, and I also don't think it changes anything. Like, the same teams are still going to win, whether there's 12 teams or there's 4 teams or there's 2 teams. Like, that is still how this sport is going to be decided, is who has the best depth, who has the most 4 and 5-star talent, who has the most blue chippers, and that's it. Like, I mean, you still need to be able to coach and stuff like that, but ultimately, the winners stay the winners. Bama is still going to be in there in the end. Georgia will still be there in the end. Ohio State will still be there in the end. I don't know, but I know I'm throwing a lot at you there, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I know. I was actually listening to Josh Pate earlier today, and as much as I like him, he's a proponent of going back to the BCS.
Same. I love it.
Going to the 2-team system. And I just think we've had three or 4 seeds, not number 1 or 2 seeds, win the college football playoff in the last 8 years. So the fact that we've had 3 teams in 8 years that wouldn't have made the BCS championship, I think that right there kind of nullifies the idea that it's a good idea to just go back to 2 teams. The one good point I feel like he made from that is we never heard the term meaningless bowl game before the college football playoff. And I'll give you that. It is ruined BCS bowl games or New Year's 6 bowl games. But I feel like, isn't it kind of worth it that we're crowning a more legitimate champion? Like, I don't want to, I'm so skeptical of expansion. I think when we were on here, when we first announced the 12-team playoff, I was like, yeah, I'm all for it. Let's just decide on the field. Then Texas and Oklahoma got added. It was like, well, it kind of changes the power structure of all the major conferences a little bit. And now it's like, I don't want to go past 8. Like, I think the college football regular season is so great. Like, the kick six, even in the college football playoff format, the kick six, like that play is as crazy and as awesome as it was. It's not, it's kind of meaningless. Like it doesn't mean what it did mean, which was Alabama loses one game, their season is literally over. Miss a field goal, season's over. And because they didn't make the SEC championship and they didn't make the BCS national championship. So like in if that happened in 2014, Alabama gets in as the 3 or 4 seed and probably wins the national championship. So it has definitely had repercussions on the importance of regular season games. Georgia loses the SEC championship and gets in the college football playoff and wins the national championship. Like that couldn't have happened in the BCS era. So I understand the people that want to decide on the field and have the win your conference and you automatically get in. I just think college football, the regular season is so important. I like the idea of going to 6, maybe 8, and I really like the idea of I would do 8 teams tomorrow if you would guarantee that those first round are on campus games. Like that would just be an awesome thing. Like then you're not really losing anything from that college football regular season. The reason college football regular season is so great is because those college atmospheres are so much better than the neutral sided games. So once you're out of the regular season, you have the SEC championship, ACC championship, whatever bowl game you're in, you're not in those college atmospheres anymore. In the NFL, you get a home playoff game, you go to the frozen tundra that is Green Bay, and that's got the entire atmosphere that you normally have. So you're not losing anything for those playoff games. So I think if you're going to go expand the playoff, we have to get some more. And just the travel alone, I think is just it's kind of unrealistic to expect fans to travel for like 4 neutral sided games a year when the home atmosphere is all we really want. And I think it's what makes college football so unique from so many other sports in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, 8 doesn't work for me. It's like if you're gonna do this, you might as well go to 12, and you just go all out and you scrap the bowls. I mean, yeah, you could even sell me on 16, and that be it. Like you could sell me on that, but I don't know. I think ultimately it's still gonna happen. You wanted to mention though the powers that might rise with the expansion, and Miami stands out as a team that should be. And I actually think this means like BYU will probably find their way into these a couple times.
They didn't even make my top 10.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you got your top 10 list. You got your 10 risers.
I got a top 10 of like the next, and I actually had 11, and I forgot Michigan State made the playoff, so I had to get get them out of there. So number 1, I think most people would probably agree, Texas A&M. They seem like a logical one. Number 2, I had USC.
Yeah,
I don't know that it's this year, but I feel confident Lincoln Riley and just the access the Pac-12 has to the playoff. I think it's just a little easier to make it. 3, I had Texas, which that was. I don't know about Texas right now, but Sarkisian, it was year 1. We could see Texas make a big jump in year 2 potentially. I don't know, but it's Texas, and they haven't made the playoff. So when you're going through that list of teams that haven't made it, I had 4.
They get the SEC, man. I can just scratch them off for a while. Like I don't know, man.
It's tough because there are so many contenders in the SEC, but at the same time, you're going to have to beat those juggernauts in the SEC to actually get into the playoff. After Texas, I had Miami, and we can talk more about Miami. I know you had more to say about them. And then I'm going to group all the SEC teams here at the end. I have Penn State, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. I think all of them have a potential to get in there. And then the 3 SEC teams, I think, that have the most, I guess other than Texas A&M, I have Florida, Tennessee, and Auburn. And Auburn right now, saying Auburn does not, like they're nowhere close to the playoff, but it's like they're a good season away from doing it, So outside of that, is there anyone I missed that should have been on that list?
Anyone on there that you missed? I think Pitt's a wild card eventually because they figure some stuff out offensively, and I mean you got Keaton Slovis in there now. D'Antonio's been solid. I could see them flirting with that again. I could see. I I don't Ole Miss, like, if Lane Kiffin stays, like, we mentioned some of the other ones, but, like, I could see it, like, 10 wins at Ole Miss is pretty bonkers, and if he stays around, I could see him like, if I had to guess who's more likely, Ole Miss or Kentucky or Tennessee, I would say Ole Miss at this point. Um, but, yeah, I think there's someone that stands to
But
be in
Ole
there.
Miss isn't. Yeah, I guess Ole Miss. I guess I did include Tennessee. I wouldn't
Mhm.
even include Kentucky, but Ole Miss, I guess, is more there with Arkansas.
Hmm.
Like, is Ole Miss more likely to get in the playoff than Arkansas is?
That's true. I think North Carolina's kinda heading the wrong way. I would throw Utah in there. I think Utah still is someone who's just right there, and they've been a
Yeah.
game away from giving it away. Like, we've talked about Kyle Whittingham being as just stable as he's been. Like, I think at some point it's gonna pay off, and they're gonna luck out into the one. I mean, Oklahoma State's a great one for the next couple of years. I think that's a really good lock. Outside the Big 12, I think that's one that stands out. Wake, I don't think that's sustainable in Wake Forest. NC State's a maybe. I don't know. I could never quit NC State. As we know, they're just NFL quarterback Matt Green. Like I can't do it.
They produce some NFL quarterbacks, no doubt about that.
And then we
I
throw
just
in Florida State, right? Like I think we have to
Well,
throw
Florida State
Florida.
has made the playoff.
Oh, that's
They
right.
made the very first one.
That's right.
So that's why
Goodness
they're not on the
gracious.
list. But yeah, it seems like a long time ago. It feels like Miami is the only realistic team. Miami, maybe North Carolina, only seem like. And if you're talking the next decade of potentially making the playoff,
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever see Pitt getting up there. Like yeah, they won the ACC this year. Like like you also lost to who? Western Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
like week 3 or something. They just don't seem that realistic. If you're
Wait,
trying
has
to
Wisconsin
find
made it?
No, Wisconsin hasn't made it. So
Yeah, I would throw them
that's
in
a
there. Yeah.
contender right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in the Pac-12, like Oregon has made it and Washington has made it.
Mm.
So USC and Utah really seem like the only two that even really have that sort of potential. Like Stanford is just not what they were a few years ago.
UCLA, not close.
And then the Big 12 has a lot of contenders, mainly because none of them have made it. Only Oklahoma's made it. But yeah, with Texas, Oklahoma State, and
But they would have
Baylor.
gotten in this year if Oklahoma State just finishes at the goal line this year.
Yeah,
they're in it.
Yeah, they honestly would have. And BYU is also another contender potentially in the Big 12. So and then
that's why I threw them in there. Yeah.
Yeah, the Big 10's got a bunch too. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. If I had to bet money on the next one, A&M is the popular answer, but just because they have to get to the SEC, I wouldn't bet on A&M. If I'm picking a team, the next first time playoff appearance team, I'm picking USC. I think they're the next one that makes it.
Okay. All right, Matt Green. Well, that's all I've got. You have anything else you'd like to add on the college football playoff front and what's coming? Do you think ultimately 2025 is when they expand to 12? Do you think that's what happens?
I don't think so. I don't think 12 happens anymore. I think 12, if it was going to happen, I feel like it would have happened. We got like that format leaked and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that didn't happen, it makes me think like the pushback was because it was 12, or maybe it was something about the automatic qualifiers. Maybe
there was also money. There was some money issues. There was a lot. If you read the reports on like what they couldn't agree on, it was a bunch of random stuff. Like it was silly stuff. Like just really silly stuff. Like if they just been forced to sit in the room and figure it out, like Major League Baseball's doing this week, they would have figured it out in a week. But because there was some dumb stuff, like who cares about the automatic bids? Like that part to me is like, that's not a real reason to not do this. Like,
the part I don't like about being worried about the automatic bids is I feel like we're already like biased towards the conference champions. So I just trust that a system that's
they're going to put them in.
Teams, when it comes down to it, the 10-2 SEC team that didn't make the SEC championship versus the 10-2 Pac-12 champion, they're going to go with that team. So like, or I guess it would be 11-2 at that point. But so I just don't like the idea of the spoiler. I mean,
I remember the other one now.
Bad for college football or college basketball, I guess. The team that gets hot and wins the conference automatically gets in the tournament. You just have way more bids to go around. And I don't know. I don't hate the automatic bid, but it doesn't seem necessary to me.
Well, I remember the other thing now. It was the Rose Bowl. Is they want to keep that on January 1st at the time that it's on because it's such a ratings boon for the networks. And like that's the other thing is like how this works with networks and who gets what games and who gets involved. And there's a huge network piece of an expanded playoff and a 12-team playoff and how that all works because networks will be fighting over that. And I remember there's something about preserving the January 1st slot and how that would affect like that being in the playoffs. Like we're not moving the Rose Bowl off. Like that's not happening. So that playoff game has to happen at that time on that day because people really are conditioned to it. Like you just know when the Rose Bowl's on and it January 1st.
I can't adjust to the Rose Bowl being on at a different time.
Exactly.
Can't do it.
That's what they're saying. And I mean, honestly, they're not wrong. Like the marketing's already been done. It's like, you know, when the Rose Bowl's on and you always know when the Rose Bowl. I don't think there's another bowl game that you know instinctively, hey, what time is it? Oh, the Rose Bowl's on. Like there's no other bowl game that you kind of have that same thought. Outside of, you know, it's
December 27th at 6:30. The Cheez-It Bowl is definitely on right now.
Yeah, you don't have that.
Go to the TV.
Yeah, you don't have that thought. Matt Green, that's all I've got, sir. But hey, this has been great as usual. We'll be back next week. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt_W_Green. Follow myself at Chase_Thomas. And remember, the Tennessee Vols in our season review recap, they're fine. Things are great. Hendo Cinco.
Oh yeah, we didn't get that. We'll have to get in on that
we'll get in on next week. We'll get in on the next episode. But I will say, I feel
balls.
I wore this for
talk
this
your balls off.
Oh god,
a little pun I just made there.
I don't know if you've seen though, like the Tennessee Volunteers baseball team, Matt Green, just annihilating, undefeated still, and a lot of people are wondering, like UNC Asheville, sleeping giant. Guess what? Swatted them out of the way, and we have the arms. UNC Asheville, Tennessee Tech. We had Georgia Southern in over the weekend. Man,
I've gotten some Tennessee updates from your Instagram, so keep it coming.
I got it. Well, you don't have to ask, sir. You don't have to ask. Matt Green, always a pleasure. I will talk to you next week.
Yes, sir.